Anyway, there. Now I'm vocal anyway.
What? I think just have it and then you can stop it, Joshua. Okay,
What's habit mean?
just put the video.
Oh.
Morning, Thursday.
Huh.
You can just put it for now, Joshua. So
Well, I did, but it doesn't help.
Good morning, Joshua.
Oh, good morning. I don't know. I'm in kind of thumbnail there. Is that because of something you're doing, or?
Nothing. We're not doing anything on our side.
Speaker, I guess I should. What do I do? Do you put it on speaker view? Is that what you do?
No.
Or should it be on gallery then?
Oh,
I'm not sure.
sorry. What view are you wanting? We currently made you co-host, but we haven't pinned you yet. But if you're wanting to see us and Katrina, then maybe put it on gallery view.
Oh, okay.
And then you can also put it on hide self view.
Yeah,
that way you don't have to see yourself.
Yeah, I think Genla would prefer that, but I guess we have to see if he looks okay first, right?
Well, yeah,
if he's centered or whatever. He always looks okay. Yeah. So that's probably all right, right?
Yeah, that looks good.
Okay. Did can I run? Yeah, that's
그진 너무 송살스디. 맞아. 미유주가서 그진 너무 송살스. 그진 너무 송살스기 뭐 수도잖아. 말실 거마서. 미유주가서 진주시 그진 너무 송래서. 뭐 되더라서. 나서. 되더라서. 나서. 말을 지셔고 싶어서. 천이유도 시절은 봐. 그래야지. 야지. 나서.
Recording in progress.
뭐야, 조슈아 지스다.
warm. Oh. It's up. It's just there in the background.
Katrina, before we go live, would you just let Ginla know that we have a number of people in the community who are sick today? That's why the numbers are small.
Tiring mi nyung ma to yomare karesena kashe di nagidu tiring.
Well, oh, sorry. What you Karinara mi say. That do the. Oh,
Good morning, Ginla. Thank you for
oh
teaching.
yeah, come on there. Yeah.
And good morning, Katrina. Thank you for translations. Welcome to anybody online. We'll begin with some motivations.
To the teacher endowed, transcendent destroyer, one that's gone, full destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one God with bliss, no other world supreme guide means to be tamed. Teacher of gods and humans, to you the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paid 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, then I bow. With pure bodies, form supremely fine, wisdom motion like a golden mountain. Fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner the best supreme guide, to you I bow. With the supreme science, excellent, spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not incomparable, wise one, to you I bow. Great, compassionate, protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Thabkhe I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom too, well established in the trainings. No holy field, endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop up to a bubble, a dream, a flash, a lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all seeing, subdue the four faults, and be delivered from the ocean of psychic existence perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, foreland, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you. May all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
더 딕송겐라.
뭐야? 뭐 그래서 어디 가디안 가시래. 우마주바치 세션 카메라. 대한 우마주발레라. 바텐 다와트베. 간제랑아 주지 테네바. 그땐 들단 짐버메시나. 야살로야 샤완 주주와 텔레시네 강gel로와리요. 셰송바다로. 다다 말아서 텐조 밀리토바 손자. 아니 첸디 지부탄다 많이 봐. 교아침만 편적이 된다. 컨디스 투사메나. 대투발레 라와요데 세라. 그디 라와게 투에서 자꾸 마음바 가반도마도 데브데 라와게 여버시라. 그디 사차데네 거 라와게 오마르치 그디 왕게 노야라. 간제 라와 주시. 아니 소소 라와 여바 마셔 예예라야. 그리우데 튕긴 강가 창거에 송거라. 간제 라와 주시 튕내봐. 다들 구급 강가 요래서 소소 삼물다에 수송문에 창구가 참마창 현지문에 창구가 참마창 튕기 참마 진짜 고급들이야. 근데 저 아침한테 땡데도 땡해버지. 사람이 고바 단단하시 최초에 고바 공내 고대가 배워지 토바시네 지하고를 선거라. 그땐 일단 전반 메시나 야사를 말로와. 내소숨라 말로와지 사람이 고바야. 진투바시 고르스 마음 말로와지 아껴투바시 고르스 오다. 그땐 일단 좀 메시. 야사로에 샤완 조주나 텔레시네가. 그때 마 내소드실 마야라 로사소나 아니 단단하시 고가비오 마로 그때 뒤단 야사로에 샤완 조주나 텔레시네 강게로 대치 치사로 마음반다 제게요 마라 다소스 수익ገብ투데 겸게요 마라 탑시요 마라 고냥제대로 뒤에서자 단단 튕긴 사가가로 예바데 고가비 아부데 취수도 마소하시 땡데시세 그거인데 당신시네. 아니 저쪽으로 송도야.
So here, as it says in the entry to the middle way by Chandrakirti, when we have this kind of state of freedom, this life of freedoms and endowments with all of the kind of conducive conditions, if we should fail to take advantage of this, then what will we do if we fall into the abyss of the lower realms? So here at this time where we have this kind of life with all of the sorts of freedoms, particularly the freedom to be able to create the kind of causes that gives us sort of a freedom or an autonomy with respect to the results that we will experience. So once we have created a cause, we don't really have freedom, right? We have to experience the results. But right now we have that kind of opportunity to engage in the Dharma such that we can ensure we have another good rebirth. We have all of the kind of conducive conditions in terms of our environment with respect to our own situation and with respect to others. At this time where we have all of these kinds of conducive conditions gathered, we need to make sure that we secure again in the future a life like we have now, a life as a human or a god, where we can continue to progress, continue to develop, and to ensure that we don't fall into the abyss of the lower realms. Falling into those kind of lower states, we won't have the sort of opportunities that we have now. We will be in a place where we don't have a kind of protector, right? We have to just suffer. We don't have any sort of protection. So here, as it says, while we have this kind of life of leisures and endowments, with all of the conducive conditions gathered, we should take advantage of that. If we fail to take advantage of that, then falling into the lower realms, what will we possibly be? How can we possibly get out of that situation?
Oh yeah. Oh, Tiliatini. Pechan Sungudoa. Penatandanga Razo. Kukabiebe Kamdi. Mi Pauchi Susu. Timbe Yula Nene. Susu Menduba said and Dabatu Karina Titu Kukabi or Desegona. China Mi Pauchi Susu Lumbal Nene. Susu Tachomba, Shirawa Tao, the Vinachomkana Chompa. Tanda Menduba said Dabatu Karisha. She Kukabi or Desegora. Tiko Kage Masu Setena. Echema dida songbada nganzu tanda denju milu toba de shagdo ami baozik susu timbe yuna neba na shide ese ta susu mende ba se deba tuye kari na de chiye kuka yore tenji kanga sangi yore songo ara oh ta te maza che ti ka sura tangri ma che se lo ya le chi jewa chema ngeson de chema long sona ene mi bao de lakwa kangpa de su tamche lungpa mimi longdung si kurangda timbe yu kage mewa tongpa si yu shabna si de se ra. Ta titi kage chiya yo ma ra, nipa yo ma ra, tenru keso na, ti kage chiya yo ma ra, kurang chi saya ta tunga chi chaya chi kari na ti ma to chi, ti le ta ringa chi, kiawa chi ma tang penchi chi tuya ta, karsuri mi kiawa saya ta tunga, kiawa tuya ki tindu samlo kuru koto ya yo ma ra. Oh, dina shi cha de re sung ra. De so za ten de ma cha chi ko de se ra. Na o de shi la de de. Ke chi shi de nga ra zo le ke chi shi de. Se de li a mi ke wa chu le so wa ra. O de zo pa pa ta le an do sa ra nga zo. Nga de chu chu tu si ga chi ba. O de zo ke chi bu chi bu do ke chi shi chi. De ga le ni de ta le a. Dong ban ni da cha ju sem da se tu ya. Sabir tapsi tanda tos jangine yaure teore tanda ngone koete migi chuba yo chu tu ya te ga chuna ngade chu chu tu sama ma chuna ya daga de ya bo chi tu che ti che na ni ke wa chima la da mi ko ba tanda chu tu ba ti gen chen de chu tan che ora che ande ne ko da ki bu de da ki bu chen bu da ka ga to ye ke tu ye ke ko ga bi wa da ti chu yo da 진짜 소자. 단다 때문에 가서라. 교화치만 예술을 믿동안 하다 미고바 더버지 지내자. 대사 많이 봐. 코에 동에 대해 하다 미고바 대야. 예술을 두디고 대회 덴주사가 저러마도 지단 동에만 모여라. 뒤에도 하다 미라라 라메 바 풍부 돌레 치고 바틀레 가타라시 자선. 대야 랑치부 타로치바 많이 봐. 랑 타로치베 주디가가 심바세. December 시에는 semje senda risu 마셔봐. 파마 마주베 semje 매년에도 마주베 semje 매도 상말이야. semje 탐제야. 라는 게 얌슬람 번에시 시알이야 때네. 펜도 주니. semje 탐제게 되는 툭툭게 깨고서 연대 군대 이제 가사실에 주어를 자삼. 그때 삼로 슈침부 당고라. 그 단다 투비야 말아가 그 정도 말을 삼지요 말아. 단다 그 정도 말때 마음만 정게 되기라. 단다 전부터 시시 투부터 시 마투부터 매일을 샤네. 되네 되지 깨봐만 뭐. 알아서 배선을 수반해서 자주 심사도 터주다. 깨봐만 보고 나게 쭉 그래서. 너 깨봐만 보고 나 쭉 그래서. 가장 고나. 이 춤대도 이제 타로부로 쉬우셔 때봐도 더다하게 매버시 때 말아 자주 샘께서도 잡아던 이제 공티치도 시한데 그러네 코란 배 가르쳐라 기회처럼 봐이 심다름 쉬우셔 때 그래마도 팀하도 봐도 가게 된다 매버스도 들으래요 말아 어디 인도 자고 기부충고단 중다 시빌람을 르버샤네 로아 교쿠세 연대 군대 이제 가사실을 좋아서 대체도 단단해 견나르이나 세다 연대 나르이나 교례께 탑실 배기 있음 대체도 세제 교가래 연대 탑실 연대 가르티 배전할 숨번에 시기 텔레토바다 삼바 공부시심 지주가 시작이 있음 Guru said and it's number shows. Oh, did it.
So here, the example that is applied to this is like at this time, while we have all of these opportunities, all of the conducive conditions and freedoms, it's sort of like we're a heroic being, a strong man or strong woman who is able to like vanquish their enemies, accomplish their desired aims, and remove those kinds of undesired situations. And so here, if we take advantage of that, we are able to accomplish as we wish, particularly with respect to the future. But if we took that hero, that strong person, and tied up all of their limbs and dumped them in some kind of isolated place, they would be totally unable to do any of those things. And so here, like that, if we are thrown into the lower realms by our karma, we basically are just going to strive to get our sustenance, find food and water, but we can't think about the future. We're unable to contemplate virtue or to recognize what it is that we should do in order to benefit our future lives. And so here, while we have this kind of situation with all of the kind of freedom to practice, all of the conducive conditions, we have met with the Dharma and so forth, the most important thing for us to do is at the very least ensure that we have such a rebirth again. And so really this involves the ethics of abandoning the 10 non-virtues, engaging in, as we saw earlier in this text, the 10 virtues for higher rebirths. And so this is something whereupon that foundation we can also try to develop, plant the seeds of generating bodhicitta and understanding emptiness. But really the main thing is to make sure that we have another good rebirth where we have the conditions to meet with the Dharma. We have this kind of freedom like we do now in order to continue to develop those kinds of paths of the being of middling scope and the path of the great scope. And so to have that opportunity in the future, we need to hold as our foundation that ethics of abandoning the 10 non-virtues, engaging in as much as we are able to those kinds of dharmas for a higher rebirth. And so here, even if though we are to gain a good rebirth, it's a good rebirth as a human or a god in comparison to a birth in the lower realms, but there is still much suffering involved. We all can see that. And so recognizing that even if one takes such a rebirth, it is subject to the sufferings of samsara, going up and down and casting off these aggregates and so forth, we generate this kind of attitude of wishing to be freed from that cycle of existence. And this is based upon knowing what causes lead us to be born in this kind of suffering situation. But it isn't just us who is in that kind of situation, but rather all sentient beings who have acted as like our kind mothers and fathers. We should look out upon them without any sort of partiality and wish to be able to benefit them as well, get them out of this kind of cycle of existence, bring them onto the path. And so with that kind of attitude, one thinks, may I myself become a being who has eliminated all faults, who has developed all good qualities, and thereby is fully able to be of benefit to other sentient beings. And so here, this is something that we hold as a goal. We hold those kinds of practices that we can't engage in now as something that we are striving toward. I mean, when we talk about bodhicitta, this is something that takes a long time, can take eons in order for us to develop, but we strive towards that however long it might take. And along the way, we develop love and compassion, this kind of altruism toward others. We shouldn't think that, oh, I'm not able to do anything until I reach that state of Buddhahood, but rather we are training in stages, and along those kinds of stages, we are able to be of benefit to others. We are developing our qualities, eliminating our faults. And so with that kind of long-term goal in mind, we think, I am going to remove each kind of fault, each kind of obscuration. I'm going to develop each of the kind of qualities, good qualities that are necessary to become a being who is fully able to benefit others. And this is as it is described in the text. And so here it is based upon knowing what these are that we pursue that kind of a goal. So here we should think that we should set our motivation for listening to the teachings, setting as that long-term goal, may I become a Buddha, one who has eliminated all faults and developed all good qualities in order to be able to benefit all sentient beings. And for that purpose, I'm going to learn about the kinds of faults that I need to remove, the kind of qualities I need to develop. And I do this based upon listening to the teachings and then taking them up into practice. So please set such a motivation for listening to the teachings.
Oh, yeah. That is baby. True, if she did, 조주립 시티 살송아.
Rapshi sarmason.
야, 하는데. 다들.
Chukchuri sumba di saso.
야야, 어디래. 당한 주티르다나. 야, 어디 단지래. 다디시거라, 빼잖아리야. 가야 통화 매반에 통화 담바 오세트래 와라. 통화 매바세. 돈다 가르시에 그랬으나. 동반이 라와도 주바 여마요 셰바시도 가야 통해 요마로. 가야 통해 매도한테 통화 매바데. 동조라 가야 통해 매라. 라와도 주바 여메세시네. 제세테도 가야 통화 매라. 자 가야 통화 매반에 통화다 뭐 동반이 통화를 시에거라. 근데 걔한테는 대체는 가야 통화 매번에 통화 담보시기도 이 걔는 동반이 통화시지 또 세라 근데 시기도 근데 가르시거라 또 걸랑겨라 가야 통화 매번에 통화 담보시기도 되네 걔는지 통제시 동반이 생겨지 통화시 시시되기도 대 가르시거라 가서라 걔네도 마실래서 왜 이번에서 그냥 통화 매번에 통화 담보 오세 시 다네 샤고사 많이 남스 디코 동반이 있어야 되고 때내 딱 봐서 샤마도 통해지 또에다 신해지 그 요마로 하세 텔셰기 요마로 왜서 그래 동반시 지실 때 권한이 통화시 지시네 때 권한이 동반이 통화시 야지 통해 여버를 시기도 야지 그냥 통화 매바데 네 내로 통화를 시기도 등이 된데 지금에도 와서기도 똑바사리도 와 어디래 다들 똑바 봐세고요라 지나세 법에 염셔나 돈이 또배 이시 뒤제기 뛰와 야 똑바마니스 동반에 또디사 네 법에 염셔시 동반에 무슨도 또디사 네 가서 동반에 또배 시바 매바 많으면 지금 말했어라 가야 통해면은 통계 시바 용마로 동반에 또배 시람 동반에 또배 시요레스고라 딱바다 땜바다 지금 라완도 주베 동계에 된대 연구마라 도시에 요마라 동계에 연구마라 이내고 대지레버리 좀 좀리아 동계 시바시 샤오레스 심다 심주 초하던 도시다 시트도냠도 제일네 대지레네 동반이 생겨게 넘버 15 법에 냠샤 시를 시바시 샤오레스 거라 냠샤 동반이 또벤 뒤제기 뒤베 두제기 되봐야 도버마세 도버다 치부터 라와도 주바틴데 기 동게기 유요 독제 유요 말에 동게 셰바 요구 말에서 야 지단 셰바 가야 메세 동게 셰바 가야 요 말에 동방에 시도 가야 통해 요 말에서 근데 또다 말에서 거라 두제기 되봐 도버마네 말에 발로베 리퍼트면 도버마네 시질로기 루다세 무대 쥐어봐봐 주마세나 삼자 세번 되베 꿀립 첨부인 것이가 싸웠어. 그 무대 쥐어봐봐도 저 코도 당하게다 저도다 또 봐세서나 근데 샘코라 매버샤고 그래서라 샘이 체제될 거 차다다 코도 당하게다 근데 매버샤게 요 말에서 샘코라 랑시된데 지레시오라 나라전에 코도 가게를 소바테도 샘비랑 실을 주고 말와 지코 라시데 그 kondu tāna tāya yuwachi rō chātāngla sōpa nyamota chēnā sēshi rīgwa shānē tuwachi samtānga yuwa rā o dīsu rā tē nē tīma sēnā sāmbhyā sēpa yīnsi tē ngā tu pēnā tātun zimbā rī sē tātun zimbā tu mēwa chāsuna sēm sē rūgu mā rō tāmi tōkwa la sōpa tēnē shiba tēgu rā tāngzīn tī mēwa chāgu rā tātun zimbā rāngā tu tūpe shiba tī mēwa chāgu rā mā tō 지단 시범 매셔 말와 뒤시도 야 뒤시랍니다 담보 맞아
So here, then picking up in the text with verse 364, and here this is the second topic, which is identifying the mind realizing emptiness. And so here there might be a kind of doubt that arises because it is said that the seeing of nothing whatsoever is seeing suchness, or like the holy seeing is seeing nothing whatsoever. And so examining, when we examine whether or not there is some kind of autonomous inherent existence and don't see that, the not finding of that is said to be this kind of not seeing. And here there's a misunderstanding that can arise in that, well, what does it mean to, like you say, you see emptiness, but then there's also passages in where it says that the sort of supreme seeing or holy seeing is seeing nothing whatsoever. And so when we try to explain that, it kind of asks, is this something that is there no sort of object of that an Arya's meditative equipoise? And so here, as it explains then in the beginning, this sort of introduction to this verse, again, if there is not the seeing of anything whatsoever, this is said to be seeing suchness. And so how is that? What does it mean to say that this kind of mind, and again, this is when one has examined whether or not there is some kind of autonomous inherent existence and not seeing that. Like if there is nothing seen within an Arya's meditative equipoise, then is there a mind that is seeing that? What is, so someone might misunderstand this as being like there's no sort of consciousness whatsoever. But when we think about the kind of even the mind of an Arya in meditative equipoise, there is a dependent origination, right? This kind of mind and mental factors, feeling and so forth, that observes that object of emptiness. And so here one might say that, well, in the meditative equipoise of an Arya, the sort of consciousness, the sort of wisdom that realizes emptiness is the opposite of something that is compounded. So because the kind of object of emptiness is something that is permanent, then this, what is it exactly that sees that? What is the nature of that mind that sees that? And so here too, it asks if, you know, it's a kind of statement to say that one, by eliminating ignorance, eliminates mere knowing, right? This is the kind of view of some schools like the Mimamsakas, who would say that when one extinguishes the various kinds of faults of mind, that extinguishes mind itself. So they would say that things like our anger, our jealousy, our attachment, when we exhaust those, when we extinguish those, then the mind itself is extinguished, because they see those as being the nature of mind. However, in this system, we wouldn't say that those kinds of afflictions have penetrated the nature of mind. Those are not the nature of mind. The nature of mind is clear and knowing. And so, although through the process of realizing emptiness and selflessness, we exhaust that kind of grasping at a self, but we don't exhaust that mind's capacity for awareness. So here, in order to counteract that kind of view, the assertion of schools like the Mimamsakas, who would say that the exhaustion of the various afflictions entails the exhaustion of the mind itself, we should know that to be a great kind of deprecation of the nature of mind.
Oh yeah. Oh, chidang arazu, chidang mi samluta nako, chochine tadi sheba kanga meba songe sori jitungudo. Nga samsang nga ji shukshimbuche omar. Ane nga se chaba shensha chigi omar. Ane tangwa chaya omar sido. Ane mi chowa meba chana shimado. Tinde chaya kawa yore samsang tengdo nga rashene. Kongdo tanga jeta chado da shikanga. Yundi nga samsang rangwa do tinde. Chik samlushi mena ane. Kake meba simbo shagdo. Sa tinde sori jiko. Semda nyamu nidi chikpo chasana, ni nyamu di sesona, sem kora nyamu ngoyina, nyamu sendu di seme sendu yora, di kunzu di samdang yora. sem kura kondo ngaje tato tende mebe shiba kura yonga yo mara samgyora. Ane kondo ngaje tato tuzu menda ane sembe sedo kores. Tima sena sema nyabdo se kores. Kaya mebe shana sadra tine. O tende sabdo yungudwa. Sa tende mare se. Sem nganji da ra. Chagdang da tuzu so de sem seri de degyo ra. Chagdang meba da ngawo nyabdo lo shub shimbu mebe. Shiba de gyundi shibulo ne. Shiba de gyua tep dugara, samlo tangtang de gyua tep mato. Shiba kora meba shani, eni chik de meba shadi ta yang ja che meba to tinte reyo mara. O tinte mido sam, ti kyun du sam che. Pa meba shido eni shenda nilu ngone to to dugara, tongpa nye de chi na. Rawa tu tuba nga samda nga te, namju samde te midwa samde. O ta te tinte samde te nor sha sam. Tā ngā te rāngā mi tu tēnshī rēpani chūwa, tēne tākwa samchī mā tu mi tu samla khoya yo rā. O tī chī lam ya, o tī rā.
So, in general, when we have a strong sort of like a grasping at an I, this sense of an I, or strong kind of like clinging to a self, a strong attachment, a strong aversion, and so forth, sometimes we might think that, well, if we get rid of that strong grasping at an I, if we get rid of this strong kind of our various afflictions, our attachment that clings to things, and our animosity, and so forth, then like what will be left? There won't be any mind. And here, if the mind were the same as our afflictions, then that would be the case. But that's not the case. It's not the case that our mind is those afflicted consciousnesses alone. If we have, but it can feel to us like it is that way, that if there weren't any of those kinds of minds that we're so familiar with, like our grasping at an I and grasping at various things with attachment and animosity, that somehow eliminating those would eliminate consciousness itself. What would there be? But if we get rid of that grasping at an I, if we get rid of our attachment and our animosity, we change our way of thinking. By seeing those things as faults, we are able to eliminate them. And so no longer do we have that grasping at a kind of autonomous self that exists in and of its own right, but rather we still retain the kind of clear and knowing nature of mind. That is not eliminated through eliminating our various afflictions.
뭐야, 다 됐어. 다 짜와 된것도 다 시야 돼. 관계 통화를 교시 나서네. 통화 매번에 통화 담보서는 시간에 통계 매번 말했어도 근데 가래 통계에서나 통계 시험도 시고라. 관계 통화를 교시나 단위에 돈에 줘봐 돼서. 근데 심중 매번 세민중 때문에 아직 면도도 어디래. 통계대 그 때지 레버 좋아 참도 그 샘기 통계에서 오라. 샘생계대 대한 초하다 지금도 시다 싶게 심중다 레직도 깨와도 지 심중 제매게 초매게 두시매게 시버시 영화에 엄마라. 근데 그 때지 레버 중에 수지 통계 시버시 요래 당연 잠도. 텔레 동반이 통스바 당연 따 대참도 요마다. 대한 담바트르베 통계 시바 요iten도 요고 말해서거라. 관계 통화 교신은 단위에 돈에 셈을 줘서 단위에 잠도 심중 매발 셈을 줘서 셈 생겨되고 술에 때문에 거기 시장장고 생겨지 로가라 지금 아마도 쓰거라 심중도 돌아 때진 될 내내 동번이 통 시라 초르세라 지간가 연구하라 어떻게 그 때지 되버는 좀 삼지 통계기 시바요 아래서 라와도 주바 통계 시바시 쿠라 짱짱 지부게 통땡기던데 이게 라와도 주베서 통하대요 말했어라. 이 맨하고 땡지 되버는 좀 시바샤네 지게 동반이 통화 당에 좀더 통화샤야 그래서 단단부 주베 통화세 담에 통화세 되게 엄마라 강가 추탐지 시보라. 요들 강게 심동 유르시나 시바 강게 통화르시나 당에 돈에 줘봐대 당에 좀더 동반이 통수샤 그래서 심중 매벌 셈매중 심중 매배 셈제요 말해서라 이제 심중을 떼지 되네 시베 똑보다 시바다 서로다 식대서 연구샤오라 그러니까 심중 매벌 셈매중 대매 내지 mendeto ose Rawadu Truba Sikiti, Diago Marisora. Udit Driba, Ona Kangi Tor, Joshina, Third and Bay Temper Ton, Semja, Third and Bay Temper, Jura Mingis, Rawadu Truba Siki, Tongang, Semji, Yoma Resera, Tanya do Third and Bay Temper, and Yinda Nube Suji Ton, Pagwe Yamsha, Kichi Kichi, Jurashin Kichi, or the Esgora. Tanya to similar choose start and so. Kenga Chebate, Third and Bay Temper Ton. Oh, Tetabu, Tanya Samdu Tonga, the Simjunta, Tension, Railway Condemn, Pojo Tonga Shawara, this on that Poganyam Shashi, Tombani Tonga, the Shash over the Sura. Tendambe Tembatonga Chubate, Tean, Tene Shakba, some Hinji, Ranshinki to a mese, Ranshinki to a Chuna, Simjula Madu Nekora, Sim Tanjang, Rangaton, the Toba, the Sheba, the Sorata, and then Tindesku Gara, the Sheba Tata. O today Omar, Simjula Tushin Jelani, same day to your resa. Simjum Meba, some Majon Shinese, same Meba, Simjum Majo, same the man I asked Simjum Gumara, Cochil Tension Jelnico, Shiba Hindu, Shiba Shindilco, Simjum engagement, Simjum Bangay, some Kajan Sabzi or Omar Resagora. Ranshinki Drube, Ranshinki Drube, Time Meba, Semi de Tonga, Ranshingi Trubet, Meba, Semi, Sem Tonga Mendes, Casuna, Mission. Ah, can the trick to Lotam Madrid. They are Tene, Shagwasam Yingi, Ranshingi to a Medes, Simju Mebar, Sem Mejoe, Mejoe, Sem Mebaria, Simju Mejoe, Ranshingi Trube. Melas or Ranshinki Trube Sem the Simju Nigati Yomaresura. Sem Yegi, Sem Tonga, Mindi, Sem Korang, Sem Tonga Marese, the Tombani Tonga, Sem de Korang, Koran Tonga Vasi, the Tomares, the Rangising as she killing the Shora, the Kishora, Shiba the Tonga, the Shiba Chinam do Yayo Korese. Killing this Tutamayor number Sanjapal. Somechemo Gerangirala Rekbar Merek Besiras. Semi Leji Joya, Semi Leji Joya Medutos. Oh, did it. Semechemo de Shandal Rectogura, Koran Rectogmarwa. Or Tenda go Sem de Yushanda Rector. Sem Rangi Besate Yoma Resora, Rangi Kuma Resora, Rangi said Yomara. And Kajiga Rangi Manani, Tabake to Maris, the Sobamabuyora, teaching Mogosha. And then same about Sem Jum to this one. Ranshinki to be Tene, Shabat Sam Yinji, Ranshinki to a mede. Simjum Mebar, Sem Mejon. Sem Mebaria, Simjum Mejon, Ranshinki to be Mela, Semta Simjukanera. Sem Yegi, Sem Tonga Mindis, Sem Korang, Sem Tonga Mares, Rangi Rangi was says, Rangi. And if so much emoti, Pedalia, so much emoti, Rangi Messes, May Messegmara, Shalapa, Rectogun, Rangi Recto Mares. Tati Kangal Chayora. Rala Merek Bechite. Semye Leje Joane Medutos. So the Jishan, so Shingan Shibachi, as so Shingan Shiba Koran Shibachi, Shibani, Rahida, Yushin and Geta, Koran and Geniamdo, Kivayoma, Resgora. Yunani Radi Yushora, Shibaranga Rari Batisha. Remember, Ranshiki Trube, Mende, Semetsemo, Rala, Merek Bada, Semye Leje Joane. Menditos, or did you go to Tichilana?
So here, then identifying the mind that realizes emptiness, again, in the context wherein we say that non-seeing is the supreme form of seeing, it's not the case that there is no consciousness, however, that perceives emptiness, but there is a consciousness that arises as something that is merely conventionally designated. It arises as a kind of dependent origination together with the various mental factors. So here it says in verse 364, but who does this seeing? Well, conventionally, the mind is said to do so, but without mental factors, there is no mind. So there's not like an isolated mind that autonomously perceives this kind of emptiness in and of itself without being dependently originated with the various mental factors. And so there is a merely dependently originated, merely conventionally designated mind that is what apprehends this object of emptiness. And this is something that is merely conventionally labeled or designated, which is the case with all of phenomena. And so here it says, since the mind is unreal, we do not accept that two moments of mind can be simultaneous. So here, again, the first part of this is distinguishing that, well, what is it that sees? Again, kind of refuting the wrong conceptions that can arise from this saying of like non-seeing is the supreme kind of seeing, and thinking that the mind, the consciousness perceiving must, well, what is the nature of that, or how does it exist? That kind of sort of doubt can arise. And so again, it's not as though there's some sort of inherently existent mind independent of the various mental factors that identifies this object of emptiness. So there's no sort of autonomously seeing mind, but it is rather something that arises as a dependent origination. And so the mind that sees this ultimate truth, it does not itself become an ultimate truth. It is, and conventionally it is said that awareness of meditative equipoise on the ultimate truth in the manner of the disappearance of dualistic appearance, that awareness being produced and ceasing moment by moment. This is something that is a compounded phenomenon that arises and disintegrates. And this sees the ultimate truth, which, by the way, is not a momentary kind of phenomena, but this is something that is posited only relatively, only conventionally, and is not inherently established. For without mental factors, mind does not occur, and also without mind, mental factors do not occur. And so this is getting at the fact that the mind that understands, that realizes emptiness, is itself something not inherently existent. If it were existent in that way, it would have to be existent independent of all of the various mental factors, but rather those arise dependently, contingently upon one another. So without those mental factors, we can't have mind, and without mind, we can't have the various mental factors. And so the mind that realizes emptiness or realizes the ultimate is itself something that is a conventional truth, and is realizing this in the manner of that dualism having disappeared, but it's not itself become the ultimate. And so it is the case that, again, these occur relatively contingently. There isn't some kind of autonomous mind that is inherently established that realizes this sort of emptiness. And so too, again, getting at the fact that the mind occurs only with its various mental factors, but not independently of them. It's the case, too, that the mind doesn't see itself. It is contingent upon an object or dependent upon an object, but the mind does not see the mind because, as the example is given, the tip of a finger itself does not touch itself. And moreover, it is asserted that two minds, it is not asserted that two minds can occur simultaneously. simultaneously. So here, this is really getting into refuting the idea of a self-cognizing consciousness, that there is some kind of consciousness that observes the mind itself. And so there are many Buddhist tenet schools who accept that there is this kind of self-cognizing consciousness. Here, this is not something that is asserted. There are some who would say that in order to have memory, particularly of the experiential part of consciousness, you would have to have this kind of self-awareness or self-cognizing consciousness. But here, this school would say that it's not as though the mind is able to know itself. It knows various objects, but in the same way that the tip of a finger can't touch itself, so too this applies here, that there isn't the ability of the mind to see itself. So if, for example, we have like a visual consciousness apprehending form, there's no second mind that is occurring at the same time, as in a self-cognizing consciousness that occurs simultaneously with that. So that's here where it says at the end of this verse that since mind is unreal, we do not accept that two moments of mind can be simultaneous. The mind occurs contingent upon its various mental factors and is something that we can't have two minds occurring simultaneously, as in there's no self-cognizing consciousness together with that mind.
Oh, yeah. Oh, started. Niba tekba chichu nige kansake tungni tramo to gobar temba se tire towa. Nyende yu tekba li shube kansa ina da roa. Range yu tekba li shube ina da karina. O ti tarba toba liya tongba ni to gores. Tekshin ta nyende ta range tekba sum kangala tene tachumbe debu kuba toku yana. Ane tongba ni to gores. Tishe doa. Tekpa chichu nige tekshinda tenme niga nige kansa ki tongni tramo to ba tsungbar tenpa la ni sikda tarba tsam toba la tongni tramo to go gode sera tarba to nyamu sebe seba nyamu le tarbe nyamu sebe seba ya oti toba liya ane tongba ni to gode sera tarba tsam toba la tongni tramo to goba ta tekpa chichung ki chebaros tadiliya chidang tudama mabuchi kashigiya tenmeliya chuki tame chamati tokpa yo mara sayade tende yora tekshin ya shusunane tongni chama tokures yandu rangye tozi tongni chamati mato na ya tachumbe debu toya yora sayade tende kelengi tudama yorwa nambe tudama o tezu nashi mares di oma tenjuya loroba oma tenjuya lo shisha chena ene nyan teme lamla shune taba tonanda teche je lamla shune taba togo niga tongni tamu nelu tamu te togo res di mato na nyamo se togo ma res di shegara o di kalsa niba tekwa chichun niga kansa ke tongni tamu togo tsumbar tembala ni tarwa tsam toba la tongni tamu togo ba shida tarwa tsam toba la tongni tamu togo res era rāngwīne chūpe tōngpa, rāngshīki chūpe tōngpa, rāwāndu chūpe tōngpa shēte, uma tenjō shē tōngpa nite, te tōku rēswa. Tārpa tsam tōpa la tōngi chāma tōku bātā, tekpa shīchōngi kēpa rēswa, tēne, chūpta māwa shēndā kachī shēne, tēmē tā tēshī nīgāgi, trāchūmpe dēbu tōpa la tōngi tōku nēne, kōngi kēpa sīme tōwa sē. Kyawa kanda chigi baasi tisi wara, de kyawa de shanda kone che wara tisi wara. Tekpa chi chungi kyawa ro, ta tambu nese, to kuba tisi wara. Tekpa chi chungi lam kaala shuni tarwa toba laya, tongba ni to kuba de ese. Tili ni tarwa tsam toba laya, tongi to kuba, ta tambu tira. To kuba de de. Tetari anda chi shindu tsawa tira, tetari anda chi shindu, Rua teme shene ne, kumi bayi me shendo, neme leme nyangen de ese. Tira. Teta yanda chi shendo rua teme shene ne, yanda ba tongba ni, yanda ba chuba, yanda meba shene sigara. Kumi bayi me shendo ne, kyuti se rura. 당신 데 매나 라와도 주변에서 뭐 매나 주세요라 주 매매나 가서 주 매나 대부 연구 말아 주미 봐 매시데 주 표시 매봐야 매 연구 말아 되나시 동반이 또네 당신 세서는 뭐 세도 그래서라 니모지에 내요 말 시요 말 내밀내매 니껴 코알 껴링 말에 양엘엔 대로 동엘엔 대로 동엘에 타도 되시오라 오 지다 제발 호트도 제달 양다 치다와 신도 도와랑 신지 주베 매바라 신의 내세다 제달 양다 신도 도와면 신의 내세대 가시르스는 제달 양다와 치다와 신도 도와랑 신지 주베 매바 신에서 전담밤 양다와 도와랑 신지 주베 매바 신에서 된다 동반이 돈서라 신에는 네 규메베 메신도 세바 세바데 시바인기래 시바이나 미시도가리 너야 이미시 에 규메베 시테 가서 양시바를 깨베 네메베세 양시 렘밤베바를 양멜엔데바 토바 토바 조라기 노사 슌디다키니 네라라야 동니 참모 또봐 예발라 세버텐라스 어디 따던다 년도다 라게 거리나야 타르바토발라 녀모 방구라 차단라 소바 녀모 방구라 녀모 방발라야고 녀모 계사가 시디 얘도 와다 얘도 매워 차단이 됐지 얘도 와다 얘도 매워니 라와도 두바지 토네네 차단기요라 유랑원에 두바 이동화도 랑원에 두바시 도산 샤바기요라 이 가서다 얘도 매워랬다나 그 얘도 매워 당하께서가 따대야 라와도 두바시 내시르치 도삼 다시 도삼 지네 대삼나네 텔콘트기요라 파소소섬 때문에 딱바 삼처를 샤삼나 에티데 티기고 말도 소소섬 기바 도시 디마티카리네 텔 딱시 메다르스 텐바 딱바 삼레삼나 녀모 기고 말바 어디데 녀모 세발은 예바도 차고 유랑문에 줘봐도 땅에 유랑문에 줘봐 김해바도 씻고요라 김마시네 고차다께 되요라 음악은 좋아하시잖아 제시도 대다리 한다고 지신도 좋아하는 신경 두배 때문에 바로 시내니 규메베 메시도 아니 그 주당진디 동반인 무슨도 또네 아름기름 전에 나도 제바다 세선 아니 세바 콘도 당하지를 녀모신다 사마세도 그래서라 규메베 메시도 아니 시버께 규메베 메시 시버께 규디가 말하니 시버께 말해 시버 마 코알 마견다 아니 트라좀 버려라 양 시버께 네메베 양시 렘바메바 티 동반이 또는 당시 봐서나 네 양시벌 렘바를 네요마 시요마라고 세바맨들레 도마라 렘바메바 양엘레 데바 토반주와 인노스 슌데다 끼니 예랑라야 동이 참모 또바 예바 세버텔라스 어티버티 시큐나.
So then next, it turns to how it is the case that both lesser vehicle practitioners and greater vehicle practitioners are equal in realizing subtle emptiness. And so here it then has a couple of different points, being that first, in order to attain even mere liberation, it is necessary to realize subtle emptiness. And then getting to the kind of distinction between lesser and the lesser and greater vehicle. And so here, according to the Prasangikas, one must realize subtle emptiness in order to even attain the state of an arhat, in order to attain liberation from samsara, because it is the kind of exhaustion or the extinction of the afflictions that exhausts samsara, leads to its extinction. And so some of the lower tenant schools would assert that those who are traveling on the lesser vehicles, that of the Shravaka and the Pratyeka Buddha, don't realize the subtle selflessness of phenomena. They have a different kind of a realization, and it's only once they enter into the Mahayana that they then develop that understanding, the realization of the subtle selflessness of phenomena. But here it is, according to the Sangikas, necessary that even merely for attaining the state of liberation, the state of an arhat, that one needs to see the subtle emptiness, the subtle mode of abiding, or the subtle nature of reality in order to attain that state. Because it is really based upon recognizing that all phenomena are empty of existing objectively, inherently from their own side, that one is able to eliminate the cause of the various afflictions that lead to repeated rebirth within samsara. So here, then there is the second point of, well, if it is the case that both the lower vehicle, the lesser vehicle, and the higher vehicle both realize this kind of subtle emptiness, well, then what is the distinction between them? So that will come later. But it is the case that for even those who are pursuing the path of a hearer or a solitary realizer, it is by eliminating that kind of self-grasping. When we get rid of the cause, we then get rid of the result. So here it says then in verse 365, having properly realized that in this way beings are actually unreal, having no basis for rebirth or any appropriation of new aggregates, one attains nirvana, like a fire whose causes have ceased. So when a fire has no more fuel, then there's no way for it to continue burning. And so too, it is the case that someone who realizes that there is ultimately no inherently existent phenomena, they eliminate the kind of cause that leads to repeated birth. So like that, by realizing emptiness, by realizing things as they are, it is that knowledge of there not being any sort of inherent existence that leads to the cessation of continued rebirth within samsara. There's no sort of basis, there's no cause for continuing to take birth. There's also no sort of basis for continued birth in samsara, no appropriating of aggregates, and thereby one attains the state of nirvana, passing beyond sorrow. And so here it is the case again that by recognizing even hearers and solitary realizers, in order to abandon the afflictions, we hold things as being sort of inherently or ultimately existent in and of themselves autonomously, and then we have objects that we perceive as being pleasant and we hold them as really truly pleasant, or we have those that are the objects of our animosity, and thereby realizing that these are merely dependently designated as such, that our mind perceives something that's either sort of in accordance with it or some against the way that we think, and it is then that we grasp at them as having that we grasp at them as objects of our attachment or our animosity. And so it is through directly realizing emptiness that one eliminates the cause for those afflictions, for animosity and attachment and so forth, and thereby won't be born in samsara. There will be no basis for rebirth, no further taking up of various existences, like a fire whose fuel, whose cause has ceased. And so here, this is the case for even those who attain merely the state of an arhat, hearers and solitary realizers.
뭐야? 다들 공장도 돌래. 동반이 또 그배. 태매기 남래슈는 자수배 때부터 나다. 대제 남래슈는 다 동반이 게 봐도 또 그래. 스틸 롱공장도 돌래서도 년도지 살아로반 되배짱 시소 당하세. 년도지 살아로반 되배짱 시럽지 파도도 심벌 좀 봐서 서치어라. 년도지 살아로반 되배짱 시소다. 간다. 대신 년도 토바라 맞아 간다 대신 년도 조르 차냠나 시소다 어 녀랑 람르테냐 타바토고 삼바이네 동본이 또 그래서 시소다 신다 라마 참도 택바 멤베 그러니까도 택바 멤베 돌려서 다 태매기 도날이야 동반이 댄스 국요라 콩데 산제 팀멜에 치기다 메송이네 팀멜에 도나를 송구라 티실에 송 팀멜 송면은 그래서 동반이 또 메그스를 차라 어때 팀멜에 되는 날로 동반이 송요래 산제 진도 가르스는 아니 팀멜이 되는래 수네 오아트 반다스 시소 도이 템바 이노세 수네 오아트 반다스 수티 오아트와 슈나리아 보름 실라지 용구도 어디나시죠 손에 오아도한다 소아추의 추분자세 수다 소다도 참아야시도 손에 오아도한다 소아추의 추분자 누신 메주다 보든 누신 남네 추신시 나바시바 금마다 니메냐지 까체도 센도시어라 어디게 동반이 시에도 스콘트 장겨다 돌에 손에 오아도한다 시소 너희 땜바 이노세 다 이번에 대신에 이번에 전에 대과 챔피언 양대지 원도 최소 신나시 오야 다 대소에 대고 대과 챔피언 양대 도배 원도 최소 신나시야 가지고 버리시더라 이번에 전에 대과 챔피언 양대 도배 디소네 오와도다 세대 대과 챔피언 양대 도발이야 아니 tenere coare se tenme donar son remado tenme bazo taso be debuto alati congore sombo marese nasora kaji de shetende kano marese nibane tene taba chembe nyande jawando cheso shenasa zawati yogoda ta atene tada chanju sembe jang tone chanju nipande tada chanju sembe jang tone nibane ti marese wara teaching want to send so but mares tanto the thing me you want to send so gares soon the water ada said tomba ni shet sigora tada chanju sembe jan nyen de so ma se ke che ba o se oh tada chanju sembe jan nyen de so ma se che ba o se tomba ni tone so be chanju nge ba toban de ba o se ona tekba chimbo ona tekba 시족이 개발 지시나 개발 지시 여신 자주 선바 야 코아라 내배 주 매번 교로시나스 더 거기서 더 된데도 야다 돈다 손에 오아도 알아서야지 특징이 자주 선배 와도 전 셔서 좀 말에 팀에 와도 전 숨바래서 와라 대다 자주 선배 전 돈에 자주 네번데 전에 오메게 tene nyingji bashige shanshu badu sinjamsha ala titamade shanshu sambane koala karsha negyo aresi ora tene nyingji wange koala negyo aresi ora chibashi nyende je chibashi wa tombani tone sobe shanshu do nyebar toban doba osa dona teba 시중에 개발 어느 다 가려서 너도 오나르다 오나 대과 시중에 개발하는 시기 맞아 다 동반이 또 왔는데 강가 이걸 요라 개발하려서 와라 지지 지지 지금 자주 선바야 코르네베 내가 매번 주로시나 아니 자주 선바되게 동반이 또니야 당시 방사선에 코르네가 말와 titantra koala negdo chanju samba shandu truya chido koala negora ti karesi gora tene nyingji telan jagdo sikan chimani de tene nyingji bashi ge chanju badu senzam chorsa chanju samba koala ne to koala simjang ge tanda truya chido chinga ne koala negyo desti nyingji da malam gwa nga koala kyo shosye 걔네는 심지어 들어야 된다 시행 거라 어디 있다 내가 말도 동방에 또 내가 다 들마 돈이 코안에 들어 말해서 거라 걔네 인지 바시게 자주 봐도 세점 저서 사제 고만토도 봐도 배냐와 가서 코알이야 걔네스 코 심지어 남 터서 된다 시행이 쇼비어데 코알에다 냐면 배워게 텐데 말해서 니지다 몰람고 왕게 내기어래서 되네 니지 바시게 자주 봐도 세점 줘라 줘로서 티셔 다 게임에 자주 선바되네 저바르다 그때 그래 다들 게임에 대해서 자주 선바되네 니지 바시게 자주 마토게 pardo sibalin zam choroi kwala kyawalin te yore sora le da sebe wange kyawani mayeno sosu le sa ne kwa kenji le sa ne ti wange rame ba kwala kyawatin de mare sara ni ji da kwala ne be simje te zule ni ji da to molam je ti to da ga kwala ne ne simje ki to to shito ba shose molam kyawne o ti ni ji da molam je wange kwala ne yore sora 따뜻이구나. 망하다 마셔. 나는
대면배 내нул래 디 양결 순로나
그게
대파 멤배 내눌래
글쎄요.
식제 차장
실제돼서 왜
어
다른 전주 선배 그냥 통나 전주 네발들 왜
말에 디 강마디 쿵장네 여러와 대면배 내눌래
에? 시각이세요. 대다리 한다 지신도 되게
야, 디 올라 쿵장 여러와 아니 대파 멤배 내눌래
다시라. 거래를 선수 이 말와 대다리 한다 지신도 좋아 때문에 신내네 규미바의 메시도 내밀내밀 향해 된데서
no
어야 다들 마음으로는 싸워
Sao mare da shung dida kis ta tek chengi dole sungba yorwa yang tekmen me denele sungba di sungni wuwa towa da
네. 야, 어야야. 안돌래 년도 살아로 버 되게 장세들 왜. 어야야. 그 년도 살아로 버 되게 장 에네 동반이 공부를 시켜라.
나리로와
이 와마데 식디 마장서 년도 살아로 버 되게 장 시럽지 바로도 좀 자오시오라.
나리
어제는 시소 당하시라. 강다 대신 년도 교벌을 자냠나 시소다. 강다 강다 태매지 람라 슈니르와 대신 년도 교벌을 자냠다. 대소 인나에 동반이 공부를 띄워도 있어라. 시소 시실로도. 그래서
ta tepa membe denele kerang sikche chik chang yorwa
수네 우와 되한다. 그래.
di chatang chang tukiena
알레오야 딸란도네. 수네 우와 되한다. 소아치 주보다. 시소서다. 수네 우와 되한다. 수대 지금 뭐지 소안에 소다들나 보아들이 거라. 어디나 시대 수네 와다. 소아치 주보다. 소아대 추위 주부 추네 추미를 된다네야. 무무제야 쉽게 온 것도 추럽시야 내는 것도 추미 사원에야 추태원도야 무무레시야 토요요라. 소아치 주보다. 도시 미규다 보데서 도시대 미규 가서다 제마다 사건부터도 요살님은 아니 그 사도 추나신다 아버지 통고라 그래서란 도시 미규다 보데 도시 남네 출신신 도시 본부대 출신하시래서라 출신신의 깨래 동부들으시기도 와 바다도 동부를 지어할 영원의 동부 누구의 타부를 누구에 따가서는 빡빡시지마도 요 말아 빡빡시는 빡빡자마도 되게 땅부 통하나시 그 동부 타부를 통대도 요 말아 도시 남네 출신신 넘버 세바 주마다 남시대 주마나시래서 지금에 유랑문에 요나시지 나한테 요한테 오늘 바다가 돈에 랑문에 줘요 말아 주마ken기 도시 땅라도 주바나시 나는 통대마도 통나시 비게 매버시래서 그래도
지기도 더 공단
Right.
So here then following this verse 365, it then quotes a source of how it is that it is the case that even Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas need to realize subtle emptiness. And so this is elucidated both in the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, where it says, and it's not all quoted here in the commentary, but it basically says that from the sutras, those who wish to train in the grounds of a hearer need to pursue or make an effort at realizing the perfection of wisdom. They need to make an effort at realizing emptiness. And so even for those who think that they are going to solely pursue the kind of activities of a hearer and a solitary realizer, it is necessary for them to strive to realize emptiness. And so those who are striving for liberation alone, it is quoted in both the sort of scriptures of the greater vehicle, as well as, and then there's a quote that comes from the lesser vehicle scriptures. So we shouldn't think that it is only taught in like the perfection of wisdom, those scriptures of the great vehicle, that it is necessary for hearers and solitary realizers to realize subtle emptiness. But it is also here then in the scriptures of the lesser vehicle, and this is what I was asking Geshe to clarify, wherein there is this kind of passage that says that form is sort of like a mass that is accumulated. It's something that's not actually existent in and of its own right. And feeling is like a water bubble. Discrimination is like a mirage. Our karmic formations are sort of like a banana tree, and consciousness is like an illusion. And so here, giving all of these examples of something that appears in one way, but it doesn't actually exist as it appears, even in the lesser vehicle scriptures, we can see that it is taught that it is necessary for those practitioners to realize subtle emptiness as well. So here, this scripture that is from the lesser vehicles also asserts the necessity of realizing emptiness. And so here, it's not just the kind of Mahayana scriptures that assert as such. And so then next, turning to the next topic, which is the distinction, the difference between the greater and lesser vehicles. One asks if it is rather due to their reaching nirvana, or the sort of nirvana of the greater vehicle. It says then in verse 366, the first half, Bodhisattvas, having also had this realization, become firmly intent upon awakening. So it's not as though there's a kind of distinction in the realization that they have, or the state of nirvana. But here, when it comes to not bodhisattvas, not just hearers and solitary realizers, see emptiness, and so they strive for to definitely attain perfect, complete enlightenment. And then so it asks, well, then what is the distinction between the lesser and greater vehicle? And so, and why is it then that bodhisattvas continue to remain within samsara, even if they lack the sort of causes that lead to renewed rebirth? If they have exhausted the afflictions, then how is it that bodhisattvas continue to remain within samsara? And it says then in the second half of verse 366 that it is due just their compassion that they continue to take rebirths until awakening. So there's no fault here. It is rather the case that bodhisattvas, solely due to their compassion, continue to take rebirth within samsara until the point that they attain a full enlightenment. And it is due to their great compassion that they do so. It is not the case that they are taking rebirth due to karma and craving.
I thought 뭐야, 떠네 다 가발렸었나. 어디 저래. 뭐야. 또 안에 대과 치중이 개발 가르치기도 하. 동반이 또 어디 간가 개발했나. 오늘 대과 치중이 개발 지시 예치 전주 선방야 고아내배 교가르에서는 안에 뒤세기도 와. 개발 치중 개발 가르에서 동반이 또 만도 안 된다 왔어요. 안에 개발 전주 선방의 고아내배 교가르에서 전주 선방의 당시 방사를 당시를 써봤죠. 동반이 또 내기나 로 안에 녀mol을 써봤죠. 세나 단도 전주 선방 고아내배도 뒤가르에서도 시나서 테네 닝지 바시게 전주 바도 신സം 줬어. 전주 선바도 닝지 담 말람게 와게 코아께 말람다 브라 코아 공개 심제도 닝지 마스네 티체도 또 동네도 트와시도 코아라 코도 냠도 코아 코네 치버리 체체 에네 쇼템 벌써 같은데 저거 삼네 코아께 war랑게 와도 마도 레다 녀모 명하게 깨게 봐요 말해서 거라 테네 닝지 바시게 전주 바도 신സം 줘 시바 코아라 참죠 그래서 신സം 줬어. 저 땅마들 내줘다. 자주 선바되네 니진 바시기 자주 마토지 봐도 시바 녀점 줘로 연기해서 레다 시베왕게 레다 시베왕게네 시베왕게 레다 녀무베왕게 지라 녀무베왕게 저 말해서 그래. 그치 교나 그치
So, here again, with regard to the distinction between the greater and the lesser vehicle, if they're the same in realizing subtle emptiness, then what is the kind of distinction? And so here again in the second half of verse 366, it is due to just their compassion that they continue to take rebirths until awakening. So here there's no fault in that bodhisattvas, although they have abandoned the grasping at a self and the various afflictions that arise from that, it is out of their compassion and prayers that they are able to take rebirth within samsara, that they continue to connect with births within samsara, but not the case that they take rebirth due to the power of karma and their afflictions. Rather, although they have the kind of same realization and have eliminated that grasping at a self and the various afflictions, they aren't taking rebirth within samsara due to that, but rather due to the power of their compassion and prayers.
오야 다 태바 침배 때네 태바 침부케 멜링게 된대거나 어때저게 쇼도 니바 태제게 때네 뽕아 가관라 니세 태바 침부테 상게 까마르세 요 상게 손에데 템바시 코네 추송 용자세 년도다 랑게다 강게 냠솔라에 요티레세 테마도야 태바 침배 때네 라와치 송요마르세 지금불루둘라 소바티 소샤레 마도 상게 까마르 생겨라 어때 깨지셔라 니바 태제게 때네 뽕아 가관라 니세 태바 침배 때네도 상게 까마르세 방게도도 던다셔도 니 개버셔바다 던다투 담보 개버션 던다투 두셔게서 다 개버셔바들 던전 시권이셔도 태제게 때네 뽕아 미릭베 규생시죠. 태제게 때네 까주바 태제게 때네 또 상계지 까레스 건조 상계가 말해서가 상계가 레스로죠. 태매게 때네 셰바 태과 쳔불 남데 소바 멤버 태매게 때네 셰바데 간간잖아. 데 람단데비 차사만 연수 소바치 용경 말해서 대간 태제데 내는 마도 차사만 신고 말해서 멤버다 태과 숨 땡배 거바시 태과 숨 땡고 상계 거바 가르스 다 당부들이다 당부들 특히 개천에 봉하가 보니 개버셔버티 개버셔버들 니도와 특히나 매배 님이 태과 전부 땡데도 상계가 말해서 근데 가당이나 말해서 라베네 님이 전부 해서 특히 특히나 매배 님이시죠. those mountains, all the Dhamma distribution subjects. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm.
So then next is really refuting the kind of abandonment of the scriptures of the great vehicle. And so here, when it comes to there are those that sort of forsake or abandon the scriptures of the great vehicle, the Mahayana, saying that, oh, this isn't something that the Buddha taught. I mean, the Buddha taught widely to many disciples the various scriptures of the lesser vehicle, but did not widely proclaim the Mahayana. So there are some that sort of disparage those teachings or abandon them by saying that this is something that was just made up by Nagarjuna and others. It's not actually the case that these scriptures are the speech of the Buddha. And so here first is a kind of extensive explanation that is divided into the reason why it is not suitable to forsake the great vehicle scriptures and the faults that come from disparaging or deriding those various scriptures and kind of therefore why it is unsuitable or improper for someone to disparage the various scriptures. So here, first, the extensive explanation then is divided into 4 points, which again is the reason why it is not suitable to forsake the vehicles of the great scriptures, establishing that the Mahayana scriptures are the speech of the Buddha, and that it is the case that from the explanations of the vehicle, of the lesser vehicle scriptures, one is not able to, one doesn't sort of perfect or complete the path and the results, and therefore the reason why the 3 vehicles are taught. And so first here we have the reason why it isn't suitable to forsake the Mahayana scriptures, and this then is divided into why the sort of faults of deriding or disparaging the Mahayana, and therefore why it is not suitable to have kind of animosity or look down upon those. And so here this is further divided into 3 points of the way in which some disparage the great vehicle, the cause of that disparagement, and the faults of that disparagement.
뭐야, 단지 당한 들다 가서라. 담불라 니세. 팀에 티저라 매베 니미세. 다 대가 침베 때네들이야. 산제가 말해서 럼네티 니미 침부레세. 대가 침부사르데서 거라. 저나 나와 미렉 봐서. 미렉 봐다. 티저이 때네들이야. 당부체네 어디 산제가 말해 지날 셰도 템바 말해서 시로. 다 담보를 좀 담보들 야 대신에 매번 님이셔더라 대과침부터는 산재가 말했어야 돼 매는 님이 전부터 해서 담보도 그래서 대과침불라 매배 매바다 대과침불라 매배 취당 어려 매배 교다 매배 님이서 제가 숨쉬다 대과침불라 매고배 교가래서 tiba simbula me chude karajan me guyare mare se jigme duse ti temba mare se kar shiatin temba mare sungure sigura ne me gube kyusen shegura me gube kyusen she ne me be nimi te me batela nimi simbure she ta tambo de dire oya te subject chi malashana goro rishinde.
So here then again, the kind of fault of deriding the Mahayana is divided into 3 topics. The first is the way in which some deride the great vehicle, the Mahayana. And so it's something that is a great fault to deride, to disparage the Mahayana. It's something that it will cause you to incur a great non-virtue for those who say that, oh, this isn't the speech of the Buddha, what is taught here isn't true, and so forth. And so first there is the way in which some deride that, there is the cause for such derision, and then the faults of doing so.
Yeah, that I'm teaching maybe Swedish to teaching maybe Swedish. You can do it so and did it to teaching shake teaching le, Shanju Sembe, so then, then tela kundu mongba ta rabdu tawe mebar chese o tichula mebe chichendi shegdwa tichula mebe chesne medora tichula mebe dream dus titemba marese la kuya tonda karese nase o te tishin shek pe tikchele chanju sembe so tena ase chanju semba se de kon simje tamje 동일에 때에 시도 사기에 고바 토바 차버려서 진짜 땡겨라 자주 선배 소대나서 결라 군도 몽바다 랍도 타에 매버서 제가 선배 때에 가서 산지에 가르쳐서나 디시식배 디제네 자주 선배 소대네 자주 선배 주다 자주 선배 속에 개발만 몰려 진바 주된 서버 삼대를 서버 진서 바로 진바 주를 넘네 내 상계 주디 시여라 들려야 되니 들려 말이죠. 전주 선배 초대나서 내가 군도 몽바다 군도 다음에 먹었지. 그때 하고고 말이야 아버지 한 먹고시. 애네 때 하마고산테 산제 송 말에 얘들다 라제 태벌 하고지 사태바 전부서 시기 좀 티체네. 들어 당무치 그래서 당와치 그래서 와라. 막아치 그래서 매버시에서 솔로가 두주도 좀 받더라. 어디 또 고난 데베 캡션에 되기도 어디 저한테 티신식배 티신게 되는 전주 선배 소니 소남대 시기 소니를 써봐라. 진바출에 진소파도 진바투나도라. 소니 개발 때나서 택바 신부 람제 소바들 군도 몸배 년도 대바 남스다 년도 대바 지자마다 도저래야 람라 슝게데 계시요 말았다 되게 딱 건데 두다마 년도 띵이 띵들라고 여러 텔레바 가고 싶어라 근데 몸배 년도 대바 남 랍도 당에 매버체도 어서 텔레 당와chen 치대 마신 버체 치대네 마셔자 대사제 까이셔야 되면 도서 막아시 그래서 야 대실람나 당부대
So then first, coming in verse 367, we have the sort of way in which those beings deride the Mahayana. And it says, the Tathagatas taught the Bodhisattva's collection of merit and wisdom in the universal vehicle, but it is derided by those who are confused and antagonistic. So here, the kind of collections of the collection of merit and wisdom, the trainings in the various 6 perfections and so forth that are done for the sake of attaining the state of Buddhahood, for the benefit of all beings, training in bodhicitta and then the wisdom side and these 6 perfections, not understanding those well, not having an understanding of the complete path and result of the Mahayana, those who are ignorant of that, who don't understand that properly, those of the hearer schools, having animosity or antagonism towards those, then sort of deride them. So it is out of not understanding the various kind of teachings that are particularly with respect to the 2 accumulations of a bodhisattva, the accumulation of merit and wisdom, and engaging in the practice of the 6 perfections and so forth, due to their lack of understanding with respect to that complete path and result of the Mahayana. They have this ignorance that in turn leads to this kind of animosity that creates their deriding, disparaging the Mahayana.
Oh yeah, so good. 몸배 균인 디자인 다 몸배 주디시도 몸배 균인 디자인 돼서 가르쳐는 연대 껴다 메시바음스 자와더라 연대 껴다 메시바음스 가서는 전주 선배 라게 라게 전들을 다는 생기 때 것이 제한테 전주 선배들을 되어라 냠솔에 쪼들을 되어라 또 대화 멤버들은 주단 시행되는 제고를 때 랑게 좀 쪼어라 rāngi tēng sōwa che wara mātō, tī shōla āni shēngi tēng chō wara mātō, rāngi shēndi shēng kē shōwa che chōng tē wā mā rā. Sa chāngchū sēmbā, tī lam nyam sōlēn tī kārī lam gō sēni, chāngchū sēmbā, rāngi tēng tāng nē sē, rāngi tēng tā tē lō tāng nē, shēngi tēng bāshī lō lēmbā yuñ tēng tāng sē. O tēng tē yō mā rā, shēngi tēng bāshī lō lēn nē, shēngi tēng tō kēwa māmbō nē, sō nam jē tāng yishī kī tsō sā, shimba tāng chik ngō tāng kāngā tāng ku nē, tsāng mā lō tāng tōng kē, tēng tē chē gō rē sē, shēngi tēng tā rāng pē kārī nā lō tāng tō bā chē gō rē sē. O tēng tē yāng hē mē bē sō rē sām lō kō kī rā, tēng tē tē bā tō sō sī gā tā, tūk tā mā kā chī kē. Chāngchū sāmbā rāng kē tāng tāng nē, shēngi tāng bā shī lō rō, lēn bē yuñ tēng tāng, rāng tēng bā shī lō rō lēn chī, shēng lā nē bē, kēng dā, mē shē bē, yuñ tēng, kēng dōng dō shē bē, chāngchū sāmbā rāng kē tāng lē tāng nē, shēng kē tāng bā shī lō rō lēn bā, tē sōng tā tē chē yuñ tō yā yuñ mā rī sām kē wā rā. Rāng tēng bā shī lō lēn chī, shēng lā nē bē, kēng dā, mē shē bē, yuñ tēng lā, kēng dō shē bā, kā shī nē. O tēng tē sā tāng bō tē tēng tē tō, chāngchū sāmbā rāng kē tāng lē tāng nē, shēng kē tāng bā shī lō rō lēn bā, lō lēn bē yuñ tēng tē chē rā, tā tē chē tē kā mā rā. Yuñ tēng, kēng dā mē shē bā wā lā tā chī, kēng tē chē rā, yuñ tēng dā kēng tē mē shē bē wā kē gō rā sē tē rā. Rāng tēng bā shī lō rō lēn chē, shēng lā nē bē, kēng tā mē shē bē, yuñ tēng lā kēng dō shē bē, yā na yuñ tēng lā tāng wā tē kwa chēn bō, yuñ tēng lā tāng wā, tā tē kwa chēn bō, rāng tēng bā shī, rāng tēng lō tāng tē, shēng tēng bā shī tuwa tē kēng kē mā rō, tē kō kēng yuñ tēng tē lī yā tē, kēng tō tēng tē, mē kī yō rē sā rī shī rē tō, yuñ tēng kēng dō shē pā ām sī, tē yuñ tēng rī mā tō tē kēng kē mā rō sī rō. Yā na yuñ tēng tāng wā shī sī, yuñ tēng yī nē hā kō nē tē lī tāng wā chē bā rē sī rō. Tē kwa chē lā mē shī tāng sī, tē kwa chē mbō lō mē bē, chū shēng tē rē sī mē rā. Nī kā wā lē sā, lō lē shī shēng lī mē, tē chē, tāng wā shī, yuñ tēng lā tāng wā shī sī, tē kwa chē mbō mē shī tāng sī, tē kā kā nē, tē kwa chē mbō lō mē yō rē sī rā. Chū sōmbū tē tā lē, shēng mē bē chē rō sā, tē chēng lā mē bē, yuñ tēng lā, tāng wā chī tā rī shēng lā, tā tē mā rī tī mā, tā tē wā mā, tā mā tē tā tē chē lā shā na. Chū sōmbū tā shē tō, yuñ tēng kēng tā mē shē bā ām shī chā, yuñ tēng kēng tō dō shē bā shī nī chē rō, yā na, yuñ tēng lā tāng wā shī, tē sōmbū tē rē tē tō, tāng wā shī, tē kwa chē lā, mē chī chā chē rā, kā rē kō nē tā mē bā chē rē sī rā. Sīm chē tā mī rāng tē tsō mē bā chē, shēng kī tēng tō rāng lō tāng nē, shēng tēng bā shī chū yé tē, chī rē tō. Yuñ tēng kēng tā mē shī bā tē, yuñ tēng rī mā tō, tī kēng kē mā rō, tē mē shī bā wāng kē. Yuñ tēng kēng tō dō shī bā, yā na yuñ tēng tē kēng rē tē, yuñ tēng mā rē kēng rē shī dō shī rā. Yā na kā rē, yā na yuñ tēng tāng wā shī, yuñ tēng yī na tē yā gu mē tō sī tāng wā chē bā, tē sōm kī kā rē kō nē mē gu yō rē sē, tē sī tō, yā tē chī lām nā. Tē sō,
So, Jigsaw.
yā.
So then in verse 368, this describes the causes for deriding the great vehicle. And so here, these are the causes that lead someone to disparage the great vehicle. And it reads then, those who deride the universal vehicle either cannot distinguish good qualities from fault. So here, bodhisattvas give up their own aims aims and willingly take up solely pursuing the aims, the benefit of others. Now, in the case of someone who is pursuing the lesser vehicle, they do things for others on the side, but really their main focus is their own aims, striving for their own aims. And so taking up willingly, having cast aside one's own aims and one's own pursuit to take up willingly the benefit of others, willing to give up. I mean, bodhisattvas are willing to sacrifice even their own body in the sake of pursuing the welfare of others. For some who are pursuing the lesser vehicle, like it almost seems impossible. They think that that can't come about. And so they don't see that as something that is a quality, but rather they see that as a fault, or they aren't able to distinguish what is a fault and what is a quality. And so here we have the first sort of cause being that those who pursue their own aims alone and don't see the faults of sort of harming others, are not willingly taking up the benefit of others. They're not able to distinguish then between faults and qualities. Or maybe they actually perceive qualities as faults, as it says in the second line, or here, the third line in the English. Either they cannot distinguish good qualities from faults, or they mistake good qualities for faults. Like they see something that is a quality, like pursuing others' aims solely, as something that is actually faulty. They don't think that it could come about, or they think that it is something that is actually a fault. And then, or alternatively, as comes in the fourth line, or else they despise these good qualities. So here, the three kinds of causes that lead someone to deride the universal vehicle or the great vehicle are really the not being able to distinguish between what is a fault and what is a quality, or they perceive something that really is a quality as being a fault, or alternatively, they have a kind of animosity. Even if they recognize that they are qualities, they see them with a kind of derision. They dislike those qualities, and thereby that leads them to really deriding, disparaging the universal or the great vehicle.
Thabkhe shen cheba. Ngarazo tsamchanglata soso chora chene soso le shenda ke chwa cheba kap kapla te ungura pamatinde bugutu be sona sam soso le ke chwa che yungura ta chanju sambade ta le shen cheba se shen tsamali kewa me ba chi yungura simje tamjelia nire menge che simje yimbe tsamje soa 대화들을 통해 medebe soa tidu nyongge chi inchi jetele 개발지에 말아 그러나 된다 주를 가리는데 집어지 장 삼로마도 그도 이나 긴 개발요 말아 어떤 데 거는 봐 근데 시행이 되어도 고 연대래도 알아 근데 들어야 다들 연대를 뭐 근데 시기도 태바 특실라 매바 연대를 다 지다린 신나 스티시도 샬라 너바 뽕다네 샬라 태바 연대도 샬라 네바 방아데 연대로 봐서라 시당 그 남배 추기 시딩 사르더라 샬라 네바 샤네 샬라 동해 연구를 스티드가 말아 샬라 팬도 쪽으로 샬라 팬바도 대원도 와서 대화 연대 팬바 쪽으로 진리게 다들 같이 좀 한번 연구라 같이 삼르다는 네바 탐제 방고 봐라 연대 대화 타신부터 봤을 때 장주 선발마도 연구 엄마라 심지어 탐제를 란레 개치와 진리 샤기 그 탐제 파파네 라 타바다 탐제 김be 받으야 그거 자고 섬겨라. 뒤던달 라베 단다 코코치 대고 내때 되베 심시 용거라. 아다 텐데트 연데 연데 연데레네. 텔레마가 제시 와마라. 티태관 멤버 너가 소야 마라. 자 텔레 라베 연데 삼레세 닝도 텔레 라베 연게서 태고 첨부터 떼고 요라. 티메네니 티 용시버라 밀 닝도 생겨데 미래를 소소를 신다 계셔 찍도 안 돼. 샤왕게 콘도왕게 나게왕게 tindeseya도 와. tin데 장주 삼박에 장주 삼께는데 텔레하고 제 용거라. 대한 삼전을 개발해봐. 삼전 임바 삼지리 마다 미래 개발요 마 실로 개발요 마래 소소 벤도 마다 벤다 마다 개발요 마라. 오 tin데 가서라. 내가 택바 첨부라 몇시 위인데 당시 더 들어 티셔츠 너 티실라 매버 연대라 당와 지던 교신 나스텔라 버다다 샤라 네버 견다네세 샤라 펜바 연대도세 전에 택바 첨부라 몇시 연대 당하시라 또 자주 선바게 샤기 견 타다 봐야 연대배 탈심바 대화 탈심바 탈바다 탐제심배 고바바던 거에도 삼을 당겨 와라. 이네다 때는 택바 심불라 몇시 연대 당하신도 어때서다 그 연대를 마도 깨게 말하셔라. 소소지 마도나 소소지 마도를 마도 몇신게 sol때 연대식으로 마도 견지에게요 말하시거라. 어때는 때는 택바 심불라 몇시 연대 당시려 어때서다 택바 심불 매바데 연대리야 당하시바 나시래서라. 연대 때려라고 연대지 요마라 미 심수세데 말아주 미래를 니를 따긴 라오네시 라레 계셔시에도 때 자주 선배 겨시 매버라레 시에 계셔시거라 어디인데고 연대리야 매버레스 뜻이도 단 저버도 말로네 되지 말로네 샬라 너바 견다네 샬라 템바 연대도 시네 택바 첨부라 매버시베 연대라 당시 줄에도 어디 택바 첨부 매버데 연대라 매버레스 연대리아 엔데 야고 말레스 이렇게 말레스요 택바 첨부 때는 걔네네 샤게 껴는 거보다 연대도베 탑 용수 쪽바 땡라스 택바 첨부 때는 샤게 껴는 거보다 연대 용수 쪽바 토에 탑시 땡겨 그래서 택바 멤버도 값이 뜻대요 말했어라. 현재 저 타다 거야다. 그거 영문보다 시제집에 강가시는 상계 봐도 야그야더라. 현재 그런 거보다 연대 두배 탑 용수 저와 땡기세. 택바 멤버 때는 내 차점을 맞은 배치. 현재 참바 공부를 저 공부를 지지들에도 요라. 이나 차삼지를 마도 소설에게 해서왔지는 심지어 수인 심지어 탐제를 써야 돼. 어디야 하고 동하죠. 심지어 탐제가 더 주셔야 돼. 심지어 인버 탐제 되게 와라마도 심지어 가가 모시에 정말 탐제 동일에 돼. 펜타데 저치도 뱅해봐요 말아. 그러면 그거 중앙에는 심지어 인버 탐제 되게 와라마도 지금 들이켜봐치요 말아. 뒤에 심지어 탐제를 미세요라. 심지어 탐제가 더 주셔도 레레레네. 더 주셔요 말아. 심지어 지게 돈 주고 있나 뒤에 심지어 탐지게 돈 주고 그러시래 되어라. 심지어 탐지게 돈 담아도 그 요마로 끌고라. 어디인데 가수라. 어디나 특별 심불라. 몇시 연대 당시 샤서 어디서 거기 들으스. 특별 심불 때는 값을 연대 기비 로세. 닝도리야까지 비교연한테 배워도 땡겨라. 제가 매매값을 처음지 때마다 지나실 때는 되게 막 자주 미간가 삼을 찍어요 말아. 당분에 닝도 전부터 깨도 말아. 자 관한 밥을 소소 조송 안에 소소 동을 해터서 그래다시. 근데 송도 야 되질라나.
So here then in verse 369, it describes, like, if you ask, well, how is it that one can have this kind of disliking for qualities that causes one to deride the great vehicle or the universal vehicle? So here it says, what harms others are faults, what helps them are good qualities. Recognizing this, it is said that those who deride the universal vehicle dislike good qualities. So here it is the case that those on the universal vehicle hold others as more important than themselves. They have a kind of exchange of self and other that really means that without any sort of partiality towards all other sentient beings, they hold them to be important, to want to accomplish their aims, merely from them being sentient beings, merely from the fact that every single being wants to have happiness and doesn't want to suffer. And so when we look at the kind of scope of that, the Bodhisattva has extended that to all sentient beings, everyone that is a sentient being, but this is built upon a foundation of abandoning harm, recognizing that anything that is harmful to others is a fault, and anything that is beneficial to others, what helps them, what helps others, are good qualities. But we can have sort of scopes or different extents of that, right? If you accept that what is harmful to others is to be abandoned, and what is beneficial to others is to be adopted, or is something that is a good quality, a bodhisattva takes that due to their kind of mental fortitude, their compassion that encompasses all sentient beings, sees others, all from bugs to humans to gods to all of these other sentient beings as more important, and due to the kind of unbearable compassion that they feel, wishing to be able to free all of these sentient beings from their suffering, they're willing to remain within samsara in order to do that. Now, some this is not this kind of level of wishing to benefit others and eliminate faults is not taught in those kinds of scriptures of the lesser vehicle. It is only kind of taught within the universal vehicle, this level of a kind of strength of mind that really, upon observing any sentient being whatsoever, and wanting to thereby remove all faults and develop all good qualities. And if someone, due to their not thinking that is possible, or seeing this and sort of disliking it, well, then that would be that they dislike qualities. So here again, recognizing this, it is said that those who deride the universal vehicle dislike good qualities. If we've established that, again, harming others are faulty and helping them is a good quality, someone who looking at the universal vehicle and disparaging that really is demonstrating their dislike for these kinds of good qualities. And it is only then again those who are pursuing the kind of lesser vehicle, although they engage in activities that are beneficial to others, they eliminate faults, they don't have the kind of mental fortitude that takes this to its culmination, that brings it all the way to encompass all sentient beings. And so here it says that seeing that harming others is a fault and benefiting them is a good quality. And if you know that, and then deride the great vehicle, well, then it's logical to call that disliking good qualities, right? And so here within the great vehicle, the universal vehicle, one stops any sort of harm toward others and makes an attempt to benefit others through all methods completely. And that is taught in its entirety only within the great vehicle, the universal vehicle. Only a mere part of that is taught within the scriptures of the lesser vehicle. And so here we need, although it is the case that the scriptures of the lesser vehicle discuss like the need to have love and compassion, the need to benefit others and avoid harming them and so forth, again, there can be different extents to which one expands that kind of attitude. It doesn't talk about the complete methods for eliminating all faults and developing all good qualities, trying to accomplish the benefit of every single being just merely based upon their being a sentient being. And so someone needs a certain level of mental fortitude to be able to really pursue that kind of path, have that sort of strength of mind. And those, the lesser vehicle is taught for those who at the moment lack that ability to generate such mental strength, lack the ability to fully pursue that. And so someone who disparages, derides the great vehicle really is demonstrating a kind of animosity for good qualities. And this is based upon potentially a lack of their having that kind of mental strength and fortitude.
다 somebody teaching maybe nimit depend buddhism 티카르시 도스나 rangi tala metashiro shende rochi kawa kanse shende ten chikbulia shende tuye chikbulia te keba meba simje tamje keba meba shende tuye chikbulia katen kenge chanju sembato so jeba asigora yonde jungne tiji de te tama yonde tamje jungne re ta yonde tarshimbalde kin jungne re tora ta tele lagba chinjoe ke yomara shenji tun tarchimba chuk tungenge simjera nyeri che me genge o tinde nene lam kombal tene tarchini kyo kushe yonde kunde simje shenji tun rubal toba meba sanje ji koban toba yene tele lagba yonde che omara tinde toya yoga tenga razu sem susu sem delia samlutangura yajen toya yoga te simje rongshim mishiba ta mishibe ngo rongshim mayenge seming어 때 차단을 써보 녀모기랑 심어야게 제가 가만히 주요봐 어디 삼을다 어디 삼어 영세라 semde sem korang arasa ta sa du to zule yende shibdo se ma che ma to chin ra me de so e sam te so yora de sem la ko te me da yende yora semde ta we cha yu ka ga shebe cha se shi da wa che de to ko le ta du yende ro ngara zen so so nyam so ma na so che ma ta ma to ko ya ri ya chin ya shi chin re ye te po tu ra sem je tam je san je ji ri yu se te ra semjerang shiwe se de tumanam luwa se sosan kunne trochir ta se tishin ye me chir ta se ri chena lu chen ku ta tu san je ni mu che sa ne o ta de ma de ya ta de 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 rang ta la me ta shi sha de ro che kawa ka se te shiro shan ji tem bashil kawa ka yonde jone te jin te na te ta sekwandu ta telya tawa chenge de telya te pe che so yira chodu gyuba che ko yare cho de ti lamga de ome do se so so be chimba ta de le da long che chama chimba ta tu me na mi shen de ba she sam ta de ko cho ko na ha ko ya ma re le chimba ta ne chora tu me cho sam ko re yong ya ma re sem ji ning do se de kawa ko na ko yong ya re a ta de nge pe to so sam nge le de ge Pentosu sam garazu neshi mara, garazu neshi samdana, eyo mara, te konta se chal legitwa. Misem se de ko giro shibichin dwe yora. Tinde, kalsura. Ta derda nimi de, rangi tala metashire. Shende rochi la kawa kaha imbate kansa sire. Yonde june teishin tesi, yonde tamje ke june, tate kungi ne tarshim barashi kari juwa ne jungura kiwa nande lap shishu regi yora ane tenyam do shirab yora namjuk yora to tabda shirab ni o tena te tanga sekbar o tele tanga shinga de ane nyawa yada tandula soba pe tikpa mambu saba tiki debu raha sekbar do ure esi ora miya songa tunga nyane si nyangua chigde esi ora o te sonda tele kowa matam na yaburis soso ki mene na ko Tekwa sanje chode mamu sondo kibu chungu drengi sere nyade rangye se tekwa chenpo le parchin tekwa sanga tekwa songdo mi samlu dramenda yora kukab teta telia negab ya teta te yaga pechu che mamu yora titanda kun dramenda de songu yora chidang mechili she chidang choji she shene dende le labu she shene kanga chikbachi 소바 전에 소도라 김마송야 되고 상바다 자신도 사제 청고 처마스 qabla shudo zambule menalia pure chonjo yore pechane pema khachi chu ole shagi chu kangle shagi pe yabu shagi tina shin zambule ne yobe mela pe shiro chongo da drinda pe chambo yo saje chomasona ani me mambole be kukula dure sigdo ki membership chu sabu ma so chida kibu chunga chere so shana ko so to dora Kimi mambuchile tile lakbe simshu yengesole kuga mambuchi mev chayora. Oya titla dia. Moda sara.
No,
Odila medira. Chao kora neshile medira. Yeah.
no.
Mm.
So then third, we talk about in verse 370, then the kind of faults that come from deriding the universal vehicle. And so here it then reads, by being unconcerned about one's own aims, one takes delight uniquely in the aims of others. So here, a bodhisattva is one who casts aside their own aims and without any sort of distinction between close and distant, near and far, is then pursuing the aims of others universally, completely, and is doing so. This is the sort of the supreme kind of quality that one can have. This is the source of all qualities, one could say, in that it is the case that by taking these attitudes, again, of casting aside one's own aims and really having the kind of mental fortitude to pursue the aims of others, there's nothing superior to that. Taking that to its culmination in the state of omniscience and in the state of Buddhahood allows for one to be of most benefit to other sentient beings. And it is the case that our kind of nescience or our lack of understanding, our various attachments, our afflictions, and so forth, our animosity, it is the case that we have the ability to develop those kinds of qualities. Now, here, as it says, by being unconcerned about one's own aims, one takes delight uniquely in the aims of others. That is what someone who is pursuing the universal vehicle does. This source of all good qualities is the teaching of the universal vehicle, the means by which one can attain those kinds of supreme qualities. And hence, one who disparages it is tormented by unfortunate births. So here, when we think about other than our not really pursuing the development of these various qualities, we have the ability to do so, right? It is on the basis of developing the qualities of mind that a Buddha attained Buddhahood. The nature of mind is clear light. It is the case that the adventitious defilements have not penetrated the nature of mind. As it is said, the Buddha is all pervasive, that this suchness is indistinguishable, and that all sentient beings have this lineage or this nature, thereby they all have the potential to become fully enlightened Buddhas. And so it is the case that one who really has the kind of mental fortitude pursues the aims of others, the development of all good qualities, becoming a source of all good qualities in a way that is joyful. They don't experience this as being a burden or somehow suffering, but rather it is through the development of mind, the kind of change and improvement, increase in those qualities, that they are able to become a being that is of so much benefit to other sentient beings. And so here, it is right that the highest kind of qualities come from such a being. It's the result of this sort of mental development. And now here, when it comes to the universal vehicle, that if one practices that completely, again, is the source of all of these good qualities, the Buddha taught many different levels of Dharma for many different different sort of occasions in accordance with the various dispositions of sentient beings. And so this is something that when Brahma and Indra initially requested the Buddha to teach the Dharma, they explained it as that among various potential disciples, of course, those like lotuses, there are some lotuses that don't fully make it to the surface. They bloom underwater. There are some that do make it to the surface, and there are those that come above. If you don't teach this Dharma, it would be a lost opportunity. There are those who have the kind of intellect, the capacity to be able to understand it. Although there are those who at this time won't be able to understand it. It would be a great loss if you were not to teach this Dharma for the benefit of those who have that kind of capacity. And so even if we are not ourselves yet able to practice the universal vehicle, someone who derides that is really going to burn in the lower realms. It is the case that they will accumulate a greatly heavy kind of non-virtue. So therefore, even if we're not yet at that kind of capacity, we shouldn't disparage this universal vehicle.
Oh yeah. That is difficult. That is never those not to the door. That is Sholoka. Tunji did.
Right.
Deva Chani Sunye Besido. Deva Chani Sunye Bes. That don't ban you sober. Tender ko Deva Yoshe. In a yankoti. Don't ban you to do that. Bet Meverich. Kamajo not a mother Kanga Tuna in Berish. Tender some done ko cheddar longer. In the lake you get on some gentle major now less over the. There's some Meverich and the Chamban you charge some commit to Kanga. Shukshun Juchani. 다가 질랍샤마도 뭐네 동행양게 매베스를 차더라 오 죄송하고 동반이를 대바천이나야 산제 소바 근데 송예베스 동반이 전다데 삼로 단단 예배 와게 동바세데 자원에 자와치 통데 팬은 되게 매버리지 건도에나 얼마 되겠어라 송예베 지수 당시 퇴바 예세 어 지수 당시 퇴바 예세 동반이를 당에 시를 퇴바 예세 뭐 저래 또들 많이 돌아오신다면 이봐 동반이를 대바 요체 제 이제 네네 맞네 너네로 체바 매발 거네 아니 근데 매베 또도 고아시더라 교단 대비 남샤라 소바 매바 다시 투나자마다 자신 내가 듣는데 가요 말이지 근데 세나시고라 대바지엔 내 손예배 지수 당시 색바 예세 어제 가시도스나 아 매베던도 고아 당세 지수시야 현대지 동반이라 다외치르 소소네 매바고 같이 뒤풍두라 가지고 동반이 세대야 엄마래 가 매바시고래 동반이 뭐네 주도 좀 말했을 텐데 야고 담겨 거라 지수 당시 쳐봐 예세 동반이 개면에게 마무리하라 저 담자랑 신의 주랑은의 주 가요 말은 알아도 삼르다 따버리스티와라 랑은에다 랑신다 랑은에 지면안에 그게 매도 삼설생기와라 그래서 가가 랑은에 요거래 랑신기 나가랑 매나는 가셔대 소보다 셈다 대sol을 때는 딱 받자마자 매나는 싫어 나다 가서 싫어 나리에게 매도와 르파 따지치체 이나 뜻 부부다 뜻 자지 제바도 소소 자와 제바는 로고야라 자지 제바 고치기도 만나기 자기 기부여지 강가서야 용구도 어딘데 가서라 지수 당시 쳐봐 예서 가지도 지수 동반이래 당시 쳐봐 예 동반이 봉하지 당분에 고동이 빠셔 그래 지대 동일이 대와 요아리 되고 내가 요아리 되고 삼루단다는 말이니 체베 때매버 고샤래 지대 담문에 동문이 야오 말이세 시파 다시 오 그래서 다카니 누가 시대가래 대바시에 손예배 식세 지수 당시 처벌이 있어 니도 대바 전야 섹시나 다음에 실쇼 뮤지컬 대바 지어서 동반이 매번 따야 돼. 아니 라 동에 녀고를 쳇달로도 내 김제 매번 된다나 녀석 그 동에 그 세기로 색바시로 날거로 매색번다시 소소 근데 당에 실쇼 뮤지컬 당에 생겨다 들려자 로치트 동반이 대바도 요르데 그 삼루단 담마디니 쳇다시 아니까 그 레키딜시라 지통 매게를 차라 싸움에 게르차라 개심분 맹게차 투나스를 따대요. 레김데 시다 지금 알아. 저 지대 다음에 실조 뮤지컬스 또 다음 생각 때고 디버스산에 내송을 통해 세바던 뮤지컬 라고요 말했습니다. 다음에 동반이 멤버 제반이래 렌데 여바 멤버 고야 동반이 라 대바치에 당하셔라. 제야 내송도 색발 돌레시나 근데 당에 동반일이야 그것때문에 테네티셔야 돼 들려자 에네고 예선을 깨워서 특별 무사는 색발시를 했어라 신배 칠초에 색발 매직거도 색발에서라 매바 매도 신장 동반일은 매바 매나야 동반일이 돈을 꼬아다 버면 자세 대주 가수라 이미 전부를 해서 동반이를 삼루단에 폐일 전부를 해서 뺏게 전부를 해서 얘네 삼루단다 말이나 견내가 전부게 그래서 어디셔도 야 뒤질람나 대바틀로 그걸로는 그래 네발랑 야 어디실람 야
So here then in the root verse 371 it says even a faithful person is tormented due to misunderstanding it. Someone else who is hostile is tormented due to his animosity. If it is said that even the faithful person is tormented, what about the one who is hostile? So here this has to do with emptiness. Even if there is someone who has a kind of faith in emptiness, they have a regard for emptiness, but due to their wrong thinking, they think that emptiness means that there's nothing whatsoever, right? So this will lead to a decrease in their love and compassion, the attitude of bodhicitta. If you think that, oh, well, there really isn't any sort of suffering being, it just emptiness means that there's nothing whatsoever. If you have that kind of mistaken idea that leads you to a nihilistic extreme, that causes you to disparage karma, cause and effect, think that there is no karma, cause and effect, and have this kind of understanding of emptiness, even though you regard it as, oh, this is taught in the scriptures, emptiness is seen as something important, but due to the way that you think about it incorrectly, you understand it to mean that there is no karma, cause and effect, or you think that this like other than there being these kinds of mistaken appearances, there is no functionality. This is a kind of misunderstanding of emptiness that will lead you to, again, due to disparaging karma, cause and effect, you come into this kind of nihilistic view. And so here, there is then those who are hostile to this understanding of emptiness, like they completely misunderstand it and just abandon it altogether. And so the one who has that kind of faith in emptiness, but due to their kind of mistaken understanding, undermines karma, cause, and effect, well, then they are definitely sort of going to burn in the lower realms. And so here there's one that has a faith in emptiness, but they don't come to a correct understanding. They think like, well, if there's no inherent existence, if I don't exist as me, then there's nothing whatsoever. There's no karma, cause, and effect. There's no ability for there to be actions and agents and functions and so forth. But one is misunderstanding that even within there being merely designated existence, merely nominal designation, resignation, that actually suffices for existence. That's the way in which things function. So you have a kind of a faith in emptiness, but due to your mistaken thinking about it, you arrive at a mistaken understanding, that one is going to experience the torment, the sufferings, being burned in the lower realms. And so here, then then what need is there to speak about someone who is sort of hostile, right? So if it is said that even the faithful person is tormented by the kinds of misunderstanding of emptiness, then their disregard for karma, cause, and effect, they don't have that kind of regard for karma, and they don't feel the need to then act in respect with that. And then there is the other kind of person that are really just like, what need to speak of the person that just straight up has animosity toward this understanding of emptiness, or the teaching of emptiness. So here, even if one doesn't yet have sort of devotion or faith, a proper kind of longing to come to a realization of emptiness, it's very important that one doesn't disparage emptiness. So again, you can have a kind of faith in emptiness, but due to your wrong way of thinking, thereby end up tormented in the lower realms. So what need is there to speak of those who just have a kind of animosity from the beginning?
Oh yeah, that is. This is also.
Mm.
Oh yeah.
So that's it for today. We are out of time then.
Oh yeah.
Thank you for this very clear teachings, Genla.
Mm.
And thank you, Katrina, for your translations. And we'll finish with some dedication verses now.
May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and the spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Lobsang's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Tiram Gururam Namanatam Niryatayami. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Oh yeah. Thank you.
Recording stop.